Welcome. This training is for all teachers and certified staff of the Putnam County Charter School System. Today, we will be looking at a classroom technique called Extended Verbal Response, or EVR. While English language learners will definitely benefit from your implementation of this technique, you will discover through this training that EVR is an excellent tool for all students at all levels and is easily adapted to any classroom setting. First, let's define extended verbal response. An extended verbal response is designed to raise the bar on the types of verbal responses we expect from students during oral classroom discourse. EVR looks for expanded oral discourse that includes lots of academic language and evidence of higher order thinking skills. What do I mean by expanded discourse? Expanded means that we expect students to produce longer, more complete responses in answer to our questions. We consistently urge them to use complete sentences, formal constructions, and to provide additional information beyond the original prompt. For example, if your question to the class is, explain one adaptation that a dolphin has to survive in its environment. A typical student response might be just to raise their hand and answer, flippers. However, notice the extended verbal response. One adaptation this animal has to survive is flippers. The flippers help him to swim and move through the water quickly. Notice how the student first rephrases the question, then provides a response, and then expands on the response with a simple explanation that shows that he understands the concept of adaptations. This leads us to our next key feature, which is academic language. Academic language refers to a level of discourse that rises above standard day to day conversation and instead utilizes the key phrases and vocabulary of the subject being studied. For example, in science, you might ask students to predict what will happen in an experiment. One student might say, I think the volcano will bubble up. However, an EVR student might say, my hypothesis is that if we pour the vinegar into the volcano, it will cause a chemical reaction with the baking soda that will cause the volcano to erupt. Notice the academic vocabulary used. Words like hypothesis, chemical reaction, and erupt. Also, note the more academic construction of the if-then statement that shows the student understands the cause and effect relationship of the experiment. You're probably thinking at this point, there is no way my students would ever talk or write like this. And in one sense, you would be right. This type of communication does not come naturally to even the brightest of students. It takes careful planning on your part and consistent intentional application of the EVR method in your classroom to elicit this type of response from students. Whether you prefer to use Bloom's taxonomy, Webb's depth of knowledge chart, or some other type of organizer, we all know how important it is to elicit higher order thinking from all of our students. However, if 90% of the oral discourse in our classroom is based around simple recall of information, we've defeated ourselves before even beginning. How can we expect students to do things like compare, justify, interpret, and predict if we do not first model these skills in our regular classroom discourse? The first step is to force students to justify their oral responses to questions. Make them explain their opinions and tell you why they chose a certain answer. When you ask which author was more effective in proving their point, don't let them get away with just saying, oh, author A or author B. Make them provide you with reasons. For example, I think that author A was more effective than author B because he used lots of facts and evidence to back up his ideas. This will seem difficult at first, but if you consistently expect students to explain and justify their answers at all times, it will eventually become much more natural to them and to you. I hope by now that you've already thought about some of the benefits of using EVR in your classroom. EVR checks for deeper understanding by making sure students really understand the concepts instead of just memorizing answers to common questions. It encourages active engagement because it keeps students thinking ahead and thinking deeply about their answers. It promotes originality by making it much harder to cheat or copy. It's difficult to just repeat an answer you've heard if you're having to justify your opinions and why you chose it. EVR also improves student writing. In general, we will write how we speak, and if the classroom discourse is on a more academic level, the classroom writing will result in the same level of academic conversation. EVR also provides opportunities for self reflection and rubric based assessment. Take a look now at the handout that came with this presentation. You will see an example of a discussion rubric that can be used both for student self reflection or, with a little bit of modification, for teacher assessment of a student's ability to participate in the group discussions. You will notice that this is a very general rubric, and it can be easily adapted into whatever classroom context you need that makes the most sense in your classroom. We have already discussed a few of the key components of extended verbal response. We've talked about the importance of using complete sentences, academic vocabulary, and higher order thinking. In addition, successful EVR requires that you, as the teacher, become an expert model. This means that you are demonstrating for students the type of responses that you want to receive from them. This will require you to be a bit more mindful of the language that you use in class and to be more intentional in the words and phrases that you're choosing. Visual prompts are also key to EVR. Pictures, charts, and other graphic organizers will serve as springboards that provide students with the inspiration and organizational structure that they need to engage in richer oral discourse. Finally, you must be diligent as the teacher to make sure that all students are participating in the classroom discourse. EVR is most effective when every student is applying it through full participation. Extended verbal response is a very versatile tool, and it will look different in every classroom. There's really no wrong way to use EVR, as long as the basic principles we've already discussed are being applied. Since EVR is a rather intense, in depth form of discussion, you may want to start by using the technique in a small group setting, where it is much easier for you to guide the discussion and ensure full participation from the students. Extended verbal response is also a great pre writing tool because it allows students to verbally, out loud, work through the information and language that they will need in order to write effectively on a given topic. EVR can also certainly be used in whole group discussions as well. It is an excellent way for teachers to preview or review material because it reveals what students really know about a topic when they're justifying their answers. Finally, here are a few tips to help you make EVR more effective in your classroom. The first step is for you to decide ahead of time what types of language you want to elicit from students. Look at your content, look at your standards. Decide what vocabulary and sentence constructions are most important for students to master. Next, you must set expectations early on regarding how you want students to answer questions in your classroom. Be upfront and tell them, when I call on you, I want you to answer me like this, and then orally model some examples for them. It also helps to have something like an anchor chart or a word wall that you can point to when setting these expectations. These will provide a visual model of the types of language you expect students to use. When you provide oral modeling and you have visual models to accompany what you're saying, both of these are essential in making EVR a regular classroom practice. Before beginning class discussion, it helps if you already have some way to track student participation. There are numerous ways to do this. Some people draw popsicle sticks, others have a class roster in front of them and check students off as they go. Whatever works for you, just make sure that all students are fully engaged in the conversation and no one's sitting off in the corner and opting out. Most importantly, you must provide adequate preparation and wait time for students to formulate their responses during a classroom discussion. No one likes being put on the spot, and if a student has not had adequate time to prepare an EVR quality response, you're going to get one or two words from them at best, or perhaps nothing at all. Try this. After asking a question, give students silent time to process the question and formulate their responses before you start calling on students to answer. It can be as simple as saying something like, "Okay, everyone, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to really think about your answers. So, when I finish asking the question, I want everyone to think silently to yourself for about 1 minute. Do not raise your hand or call out until I give the signal saying it's okay." Extended verbal response is a versatile classroom tool. When it is applied consistently and effectively, it will raise the bar for oral discourse in your classroom to a much more academic level. While it does require planning and intentionality on your part, the outcome is students who are more confident in their ability to speak and write academically. I think we can all agree that is a very worthy goal for us to have. If you have any further questions about EVR, please feel free to contact your school's ESOL teacher, who will be happy to assist you. Thank you so much for your attention to this training.